With that, I wanted to introduce Irina and Alex, so we can give them a warm welcome.
Thank you.
Hello.
Oh, hello. Good turnout. Well, today is my honor and privilege to introduce Alex Gregory, our first guest in the LEGO Talks. And I would like to say a few titles that Alex holds, and I would need to read it because obviously quite a few of them. I don't want to miss out any of them. So Alex, you are a two-time Olympic gold medalist, London 2012 and Brazil 2016. You're a five-time world champion and world record holder for the Great Britain men's rowing team. You're named as Olympic Athlete of the Year at the GB Rowing Team Awards. You are an MBE, patron of the British Exploring Society, author, public speaker, and the father of 3 small children. Let's give Alex a very warm LEGO welcome. Round of applause. Are you excited to be here today, Alex?
Yeah, I'm super excited. Is my thing working? Yeah. Super excited to be here. Thanks everyone for turning up. Thanks, man.
That's okay. Actually, it's my first time, so be kind. Next time you will be in the seat. So I hope today we'll explore a little bit more about what's behind all these titles, and also to know better you as a person and your life story, your life achievements, and what passions you're currently pursuing. And also, we gave Alex a challenge. It's currently on the table that involves LEGO, no surprise, because the play is at the heart of what we do. So Alex created a little representation of himself. So we will disclose it at the end. And but I think it looks really good. And I would like to go a little bit back to introductions, because the way I introduced you was very formal. Yeah, with titles, quite significant achievements. But if you are to introduce yourself, and you can use only 3 words, what would you?
That's tall, I suppose. Copying out, isn't it? I think I'm quite kind.
That's good. And the third one?
And maybe surprisingly not very competitive.
Right, that's interesting. I think we'll explore more about this. Thank you for sharing this. So your life journey so far is pretty impressive. And you have recently retired from competitive sports and you're exploring some other passions of yours. But before we go into this space, let's start with how it all began for you. Can you just tell us a little bit more? How did you grow up? What was the environment like? What did you like to do when you were a child?
Yeah, so I suppose I feel very lucky. I had a lovely upbringing. Mum and Dad chucked me in a swimming pool when I was young, and they kept taking me to swimming. So I got into sport that way. That's how I found my life in sport. But outside of that swimming life, I used to be outside. My dad used to own a garden centre, so I was taking to work every weekend. And I just had an outdoor life. So I've always had that passion and that interest, and that's been sort of my natural environment. But I got into rowing when I was 17, and a friend from school invited me down to the local rowing club, Evesham Rowing Club, in Worcestershire. And this guy came back from a weekend course, and he just said, "Alex, you've got to come give it a go. You're tall, you'll love it." Wow, this is a load of rubbish. I'd never watched rowing before. I didn't know anything about it, didn't know anyone who rowed. And swimming was my thing. I wanted to be the best at swimming. But this guy wouldn't shut up. He kept pestering me for months and months. So eventually, just to shut him up, I went down to the club. And from the moment I put a boat into the water and stepped in it and flipped out into the stinking river water.
What time of the year was it?
It was, it must have been summer. It was summer. I knew it was the thing for me. So that's how I got into my sport.
And at what point when you start doing this, you thought, actually I'm quite good, and I can go all the way to win all these golden Olympic medals, etc.?
Well, when I started, I was quite fit. Is this me?
Yeah.
Sorry. I was quite fit because of the sport I had done, the swimming I had done. But I wasn't any good. I was someone who had potential. I was told I had potential, and that's the most frustrating thing, the most annoying thing anyone can say. Because I was tall, I had long levers. Rowing, you just need long levers to lever yourself through the water to bring the speed. So I was told I had potential. So every time I tried and failed and tried and mucked it up and let people down and let my crewmates down, everyone kept saying, my coach kept saying to me, "Alex, stick it out, you've got loads of potential." And it was a painful, I had 8 years of disaster, 8 years of getting to a stage and then failing. I passed out in boats, I capsized, I got injured, I let my crews down, I let my coach down the whole time. And so after 8 years, I just thought enough is enough. I was devoting my life to this sport and I wasn't going anywhere. And I was still someone with potential and I was never meeting that potential. So it was a very frustrating start to my career, I suppose.
So what was this pivotal moment when you actually started believing in yourself?
So what happened was, it was 2008 and I was just about to go to I was trying to go to the Olympics in 2008. It was my last chance, this was it for me. Disaster after disaster, and I thought, just give it one more go. And I got selected in the crew, 4-man boat, and 7 days before we were due to fly off to race this qualification race for the Olympics, I was on the lake just outside Reading, and it was quite a windy day, and the waves were lapping over the side, and the clouds were low, it was raining, and it was just a typical day on the lake. And I took a stroke, and as I took a stroke, turned around to see where we were going. To go backwards in rowing, it's a stupid sport, I don't know if anyone's you go backwards, you have to turn around to see where you're going, but you're not supposed to, you're supposed to keep your head forward. But as I turned, my oar caught a wave, and there was just suddenly a lot more pressure on the oar than I was expecting. And in my twisted position, I suddenly got this stabbing pain in my side. Ah, God, I thought, oh my no, I had to stop. The other 3 guys in the boat, "Alex, you alright?" I said, yeah, we finished off this session. I carried on for a couple more days. But it got to the point where my rib, my side was so painful I had to flag it up to the medical team. I was whisked off for an emergency scan, and it turned out I had a fairly severe stress fracture in my rib. I was taken out of the boat, and now 5 days before we were due to fly off to race this qualification race, the most important race of our lives. This is my 8th year of disaster, and I just had another disaster. So I was taken out of the boat. The guys went to try and qualify the boat for the Olympics, and rowing is a sport where there are no shortcuts. There's just no. You just have to spend the time. We'd been in this boat for pretty much 12 months, and we were either going to win or lose by this much. And when you have a reserve come on board, they could be the best in the world, but they just might not click with 5 days with the rest of the crew. And that could be the difference. Point nothing of a difference. They missed out on qualification by 0.2 of a second. So that crew, Great Britain didn't have a quad in the Olympics that year because of the 3 guys who I was rowing with didn't go to the Olympics that year because of me. One guy never went to the Olympics. That was his last chance. He was of that age, and he never went to the Olympics because of me.
But you've never been invited to their Christmas parties anymore.
don't get Christmas. So that was the end for me. That was it. 2008, failure after failure. I was giving up. I was about to walk away. But then I was thrown a lifeline. Back to your question, what's the turning point? Sorry, long answer to a question. Back to the turning point. I was thrown a lifeline straight away, and it came from this guy called Jürgen Grobler, and he's the chief coach of the British rowing team, the men's side of the British rowing team. Jürgen is a German guy. He's only ever won a gold medal at every Olympics he's ever coached at, which is now 12 Olympics. So it's an extraordinary run of consistent success and performance. And so when Jürgen says something to you, he was Steve Redgrave's coach and Matt Kinson's coach, and he walked up to me while I was just hanging around getting my rib healed and I'm going to get a proper job. He walked up to me and said, "Alex, okay." I'm sorry if there's any German people here. I can't help it. Okay, Alex, I want you to be my spare man. Spare man? What's that?
Inspiration.
He was asking me to be a reserve for the Olympic team that year. I had to weigh this up. How was I going to look at the guys who I'd let down in the eye and tell them I was going to the Olympics and they weren't? So I didn't look at them in the eye. And I took Jürgen's lifeline and I jumped on that plane and I figured that this would be my last hooray, this would be my Olympic experience. For the rest of my life I could vaguely say I've been part of a British team at the Olympics and I'd walk away after that. It's kind of satisfying. But it was there on the sidelines in Beijing that everything changed for me. I was, for the first time in 8 years, I was at an event with no pressure, no expectation on me. I was there to carry oars down, to wash boats, and if someone was ill, jump in a boat. But no one ever gets ill at that stage. So I could see things in a completely different way. I had a chance, an opportunity to step back and see what I'd been doing, what I'd been putting myself through all this time, and watching my mates win medals in front of me. And I watched every race of the Olympics there, and a few sort of key things struck me, and it changed my mindset. It made me realise why I was doing it, what I was truly doing it for. I'd always said I wanted to go to the Olympics and be an Olympic gold medalist, but I didn't have any clue why or what that meant until I was sitting there seeing that. So that was the same.
What is that he saw in you? What is that he gave him the confidence to actually get you in and allow you to have this opportunity?
So I think Jürgen gave me that opportunity because he saw that despite all the failures, all the disappointments, all the disasters I'd had, I was still there. And I was still working hard, and I was still doing everything I could at that step until that stage to be in the team and to do what he needed me to do and to be a good teammate member. And so he saw that I was committed to what we were trying to do. I just hadn't found the key just hadn't fitted yet. And so he gave me that opportunity. And a lot about rowing is about how everyone, nothing we do in this sport is alone. There's not a single thing that you can go off on your own and do. Everything revolves around your teammates, your crewmates, the people in your team, the support staff. And I was someone who enjoyed being around people, and I kind of tried to help people around. So I think that I was a useful team member despite my performances.
And then came 2012.
Yes.
And you were participating in the Olympic Games, and you were part of the team of the three mates that actually won the Olympics before in Beijing. Did you feel any pressure?
Definitely. So when I'd been sitting on the sidelines as a reserve in Beijing, I'd watched the Coxless Four, Great Britain Coxless Four, come past and win gold. In that boat was Pete, Andy, Tom, and Steve. Four of my mates. And 4 years later, I was in the boat with them, apart from Steve had retired, so I'd replaced Steve. Took him out, actually. And so suddenly I found myself at the Home Olympics, just up the road from here at Dorney Lake, 20 minutes from my home, in a boat with three guys who'd done it before, who'd won gold before, in front of a home crowd, in the Coxless Four. And the Coxless Four is a boat that Steve Redgrave won his 5th and final Olympic gold in. Matt Pinsent won his 4th and final gold in. So in 2000 they won gold. In 2004 they won gold. In 2008 my crew had won gold. We were going for the 4th consecutive win in that boat class. No nation in the history of rowing had ever done that before. So the expectation was on us. We were being coached by Jürgen. And if we didn't win this, then I was a new boy in this boat. It's going to be all eyes on me. I'd be letting them down, and I'm pretty sure Jürgen has a gun. It was a pretty stressful situation to be in.
So what happened? How did you feel on the day? Can you just give us a little bit more flavor? Because for the mere mortals like us who have no clue what does it mean to live your life, to kind of achieve this sort of result, and how does it feel on the day?
Well, you cannot get out of your head that I'd been training, I had practiced rowing 7 days a week, pretty much every single day of the year for 12 years, leading up to this 6-minute race that was about to come. And I remember sitting in this tiny little room, pretty much about the same size as this, pretty much, 4 of us in there, stretching, ready to race. And And the other guys had their headphones on, and we were just as nervous as you can possibly be. And I just remember thinking about this, 12 years, training every day for this 6-minute race is going to define me for the rest of my life. And I just started chuckling to myself. And that thought was just so ridiculous that it just took the pressure off. And I thought, it just doesn't matter. I could get it right or get it wrong. It just doesn't matter. So the pressure was off in my mind then, and we went off to race. But the start line of Olympics, so it's 2,000 metres, the race is 2,000 metres, start line over here, finish line over there, you're going backwards. And it's eerily quiet down at the start line. There's nothing going on. You can hear the blood rushing through your ears. You're sat in the boat, just ready to race. There's 30,000 people down in the stands down at the finish line in the last 250 metres, and 29,000 of them are shouting for us. And the umpire does the roll call. You sit in a tower in front of you, and he goes, "Ready 1, Germany, silent. Ready 2, it's not Jürgen, it's a different one. Ready 3, Netherlands," and he does the roll call, and he goes, and it's silent, silent, silent. Lane 6, Great Britain, and then from 2,000 metres away down at the finish line, this roar comes up the lane, and it hit us over the backs of our heads, and our stroke guy Andy turned around and said, "That's for us boys." And it was, and I tell you what, the surge of adrenaline in that moment, and we talk about a home crowd. That is the benefit of a home crowd. We knew we had that support all the way down. We got off to a good start. Within 10 strokes or so, you kind of know how the race is going to go. We edged ahead of Australia, who were our main rivals. They'd beaten us in the race before this, so we edged ahead of them, and we just connected up, and we just, without going into too much details about rowing, we had a good race. And we ended up coming into the last 250 metres of the race with the crowd going nuts. We couldn't hear each other think or speak in the boat, and I just remember saying to myself, we were in the lead, don't muck this up, don't muck this up, don't muck this up, for every stroke for the last 2.5 minutes. And we crossed the line, and we won it.
It's amazing, absolutely. Round of applause. And after that, I know that in your hometown, all the force boxes were painted gold. Must have felt really special.
Yeah.
Are they still gold, or is it already with painted white?
Yeah, they said they were going to keep them gold for a year. I was livid, so I had to speak to them. Yeah, they've kept it gold, which is really nice. It's a really nice thing, and it means a lot. These little things meant a lot. We didn't know going into a home Olympics what it was going to be. We had no clue what it was going to be like, but the effect it had on people, and still people now come up and say, I was there at the race, or I was in London at the time, and London changed, and all these little things. And the post boxes just keep the reminder and the good feeling and the goodwill of that time. And it's very special. I'm very lucky to be a part of it. We were on Super Saturday as well. No one knew it was Super Saturday. No one knows us from Super Saturday. But can I just say one little story about crossing the line? We won gold, and I was in the bow seat, so I was first to cross the line. I just had that in. But anyway, 12 years I've been dreaming of this moment. All my life I've been dreaming of this moment. I've just had always wondered what it was like to cross the line first in the Olympic Games. And the feeling, all it was relief. Thank God that's over. Thank God that race is over, that 6 minutes, that week, that month, that year, that 4, 8, 12 years. Thank God that's over. Don't have to do it again. Lay down in the boat, and the crowd were going nuts, and every time we raised our arm, the roar would go up a little bit more, so we were doing that for ages. It was really funny. And then someone on the side is going, "Great, mate, come over. Some vicious official, come over. So we had to get out, and you thrust in front of the TV cameras, and Redgrave and his mate Inverdale stick a microphone in your face and say, "How are you feeling?" And you have no idea how you're feeling. Just 12 years. You don't know, so you say some stupid things in front of the BBC. And then someone else is going, "Great, move forward. And before you know it, you're standing about to receive your medals. It's still in your wet kits, with Australia over there to our right, and the USA over here, and you've got the bronze medal. And over there's 3 guys where those seats are, and they're in grey suits, and I recognise all of them. They're 3 rowing officials. And I knew they were all Australian. I couldn't work it out, but it turns out that at these rowing events, you can apply to which event you hand out the medals to. And these are the Aussie guys. Again, apologies if there's any others here. They were so sure that they were going to win, they applied to hand out the medals. So we had 3 grumpy Australian guys walking towards us with medals on the tray. And anyway, this was hung around my neck, and then I looked up, and there was my mum, my dad, and my brother, and they were hugging each other, bawling their eyes out. And that was the moment when it went from relief to happiness. It was all worth it.
Is it the real one, the coffee?
No, chocolate.
And then it happened all again in 2016 in Brazil.
Yeah.
Was it different from the first experience getting the Olympic gold?
There's one. Can I just say one more thing?
Of course you can. Go, sir.
Yeah, it was different. But 2 days after we got that medal, we were in it was London, so you get invited to all sorts of parties and events and things. And I was at some event, and this is 2 days later. I was just there, like swinging them around, you know. And then suddenly the crowd went quiet. It wasn't a crowd. It was just the people went quiet. And Jürgen walked out from a gap in between people, and he came up to me and said, "Alex, put it away." It is easy to do it once. The real challenge is to do it again. And I thought, so you give me 2 days to enjoy this. But he was absolutely right. And if anyone could say that, it was Jürgen. And so immediately I knew I was going to go on for another 4 years and try and get to Rio.
So what does it take between the school years? So what do you do? Just train every day, or you have a kind of a little bit more relaxed schedule?
No, definitely not. So after the Olympics, you might take another week off or another couple of weeks off. You basically have 3 weeks off, just completely doing nothing, and then it all starts again. And so every year there's a World Championships which you aim for, and just because I've won 1 gold, it's the same for anyone. The slate is white clean. Jürgen is on you every stroke you do, every stroke you take. Everything is about performance. So you have to earn your seat again and your place again each year, and every year is the same. Olympic year is the same as the year before, is the same as the year before. So
and is it the same team of people?
No.
What's the difference?
No, so there's not necessarily any consistency from year to year either. It's about who's performing and where those people are put in the boats. So I was lucky enough to be in 3 really good crews in the years, so 2013, 14, 15, and we won the World Championships both times. So that was in a 4 and an 8, 2 different boat classes. And then I found myself back in the Coxless 4 in 2016 for the Olympics.
Okay, that's great. And I guess I'm just trying to see how the experiences that you have can be transferred in our lives, in our work lives, because you were talking about the failures, you were talking about picking yourself up, somebody helping you, a coach, and also your teammates supporting you. I guess for us, something like we can resonate with this as well, being part of the team, giving feedback to one another, getting support from our leaders, from the organization. And tell us a little bit more about the feedback, because feedback is something that we sort of kind of putting a little bit more focus on this year and next year. So can you just tell us about the experience with the feedback when it's really worked well for you, and sometimes it just didn't work and you just would never advise anybody to do this one?
Yeah, I suppose there's kind of two stories I would take to describe that. First of all, the way Jürgen coaches is one way. So Jürgen is unlike any other coach that I've had before. He would never say, so we'd be out on the water and do a 20-kilometre session or something, and it's a couple of hours, and he would say 4 words in those 2 hours. And it would be, guys, that's a wasted word, guys. The stern is dipping. And the stern is dipping just means the boat is going like that. And we want the boat to run as smoothly and flat as efficiently as possible. But because in rowing you're moving forward and back, your weight is going forward and back, so the stern inevitably does dip a bit. But you want to try and reduce that. So he'll say the stern is dipping, and he will never say, Alex, you are rushing forward, slow down going forward to stop the stern dipping. He will never talk about anyone individually. He sees the boat as a whole. So that starts us thinking in the boat, well, who's doing this? Why are we doing this? We'll start having a discussion ourselves. We'll start working it out as individuals in the boat and as a crew in the boat. And Jürgen might not mention that point for another 2 weeks. But then 2 weeks down the line, on another session, he'll go, the stern is better. Guys, the stern. So in that time, we have made this change ourselves. We've figured it out ourselves. We have talked to each other, communicated with each other, and turned this change into a robust change that we will keep for the rest of the season. If he'd said, Alex, stop rushing into the front, I would do that for 10 strokes. While I remember, but then someone else might say something else and I'll forget about that and go back to it. So my change won't last. Well, 3 months down the line, we still have that problem. And it just doesn't become a robust change. So his way of coaching is different and kind of quite clever, I think, and it leads to lasting changes. And the other thing about how we get on, and the 2012 boat, we were selected, and 4 of us were selected. We were the best 4 guys in the country. We'd earned our seats as individuals, and then we got in the boat with about 6 months to go before the Olympics, and we were terrible. We were dog slow. It was embarrassing to be in the boat. We were at the bottom of the team in timepieces. We were an awful crew together. And it turns out we were kind of 2 pairs. So Tom and I had rowed together, Andy and Peter rowed together a lot. And we'd been thrust in this boat and we were just clashing. We just couldn't make it work. Sometimes boats work instantly, sometimes they don't, and this one really didn't. So we muddled through the season, we tried to get through it, we were constantly working on things. We have a briefing before every session and a debriefing after every session, and we were saying the right sort of things, and Jürgen was having input and everything, but we were maybe getting slightly better, but then we were beaten by Australia, as I mentioned, in the last race, about 8 weeks, 2 months before the Olympics, and that gave us the kick at the backside we needed. We realised that we weren't addressing these issues properly, and we weren't going to win the Olympics in 2 months' time. So we went off to speak to, 2 of us went off to speak to Matt Pinson, and so this is kind of the point I would say, that do never be afraid of speaking to someone who's been there, who's done it before, who's done what you're trying to do, who might be a colleague or someone from a different organisation or someone above you or below you or around you. Speak to people, because you never know what they might say. And all Matt Pinson said in his living room one evening was, do you talk to each other? And we said, yeah, of course we talk to each other. And he said, no guys, do you really talk to each other? Are you really honest with each other? Are you going to cross that line in 2 months' time and have no regrets? And it was pretty telling. There were only 2 of us there in that room out of the 4 of us. And he was absolutely right. We weren't really truly addressing the issues we had, the problems we had. We didn't really get on. We got on off the water, but we didn't really get on the water. So Tom and I then called a meeting the next day when we got to Austria, this training camp, and we had it out with Andy and Pete for a couple of hours, and it was the best discussion we had. For the first time ever, I felt like I could say to Pete, I can't follow you, you're doing all these technical things differently, and Pete could say the same to me, and vice versa. And we were just completely honest, and it just didn't matter. And I don't know if it's a British thing, but we are always so afraid of upsetting the apple cart. On these training camps, we were sleeping, you sleep in a bed next to each other, you have breakfast with each other, you're in the boat with each other, you're in the gym with each other, and if you say something that might hurt their feelings, your life is going to be a bit uncomfortable for a while. So we would always brush over those issues. But we opened it up and it changed everything. And we got a clear picture of what we wanted to do, how we wanted to do it. We could be, when we were in the after the same thing, we'd just been speaking a different language. And it changed everything. And in the next 8 weeks, we progressed in speed and we became a crew, a proper crew. And we won.
That's great. Well, thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing this insight. Somebody told me that you have your first child while you're still competing. How did it happen? I mean, it's not that type of talk. The question about balancing the professional life and the kind of personal life. This was the question.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to say, it was a shock. Maybe you could tell me. So it was in 2009, we discovered that Emily was pregnant somehow. And it was just the time when I was turning myself around, just figured out I'd been a reserve. the Olympics, and I was just figuring things out. And we found out Emily was pregnant, and after a few sort of, how did you do that? We kind of crosswords to each other. It was obviously a wonderful thing, but I was terrified about telling Jürgen, and I know Jürgen is coming up a lot. He was obviously very influential in my life, but I was worried about telling Jürgen because I thought that he would think that I wasn't committed, I wasn't taking things seriously, that I would be distracted by family and family life. I was terrified, and it took me 6 months to build up the courage to be able to tell him, and then we just couldn't hide it anymore. And I asked for a meeting with Jürgen, which is kind of pretty rare. It was pretty rare for me. And he sat down across the table, and it was just very serious. And I said to Jürgen, what, Alex? I'm going to have a child. And his eyes just glinted suddenly right down there. He leant over the table and gave me a massive smack on the shoulder and said, Alex, that is the best news I have heard. And I tell you what, right there, the weight of the world lifted off my shoulders. And he's an incredible man because he knew then that he knew already that I was committed to what we were doing in my sport, my life in rowing. But he also knew right then that I was committed to something else, that I would be a young dad who was never going to go off the rails. I was going to be committed to my family, you know. And he had foresight as well, which was I was later to discover. That changed my life. When we had our first child, Jasper, in that year, my life suddenly had two parts, two really important parts. I had a work life and a home life, and it was immediately separated. And there's this little line in the gates to the car park of the lake. And very quickly, after having this child, that line meant a whole lot to me. It was this separation, it was a physical separation between the two parts of my life. I'd drive over the line, and my focus was on the family side. We would never, in 9 years, we basically never talked about rowing at home, which was different to before. Just because family life is busy, you have more important things to do. And then in the morning, I would cross that line again, coming in, and I'd be away from family, and I'd be focused on what I was doing. So the separation helped me so much in my performance. And it helped me mentally in my performance, and also I'd be in the change room in the morning, and all the guys would come in and be like, oh my God, I'm so tired, I can't do this training today. And I was thinking, yeah, mate, but you went home yesterday afternoon and sat on the sofa for 6 hours and had dinner and went to bed. I went to the park, I took my kids to bed, I lay on my son's floor for 3 hours a night to get him to sleep. I woke up 6 times in the night and I sat on the sofa. And I'm here in the morning, and I'm going to beat you on the water now. So that side of it gave me a great amount of motivation as well, because it was something different in that squad and that team. So having children absolutely only helped me. It was a little bit unfortunate later with the second two children, where I was away for both their births, and I missed their births. And yeah, Jürgen wasn't very helpful in that.
As you can imagine. So it takes me to the kind of other parts about kind of exploring about you and transitions, right? Because obviously in life we go through the massive transitions. It's starting a family, or changing countries, or losing jobs, finding jobs. In your case, it's moving from this competitive, highly exciting world of kind of sports into something different. So can you just give us a little bit of kind of input? How did it happen? How this transition happened? And how did you discover the new passions that you're currently exploring?
Yeah, well, I suppose this is where I've got to be like completely honest. I knew going into the Rio Olympics, but by the way, I do have this. It's just the same. I knew going into that Olympics that it would be my last one, and I was going to stop. And actually, coming into the last 500 metres of that race, we were in the league again ahead of Australia. It was a different crew, completely different crew. I was the only returning guy in that boat. But this was the best crew that I'd ever been a part of. And we were well ahead of Australia. And coming into the last race, I was thinking, I've got 2 more minutes of rowing left. I'm going to enjoy this for a change. And when the call came to squeeze it on and push ahead and go for the finish line, I thought, no, leave this to you boys. And I watched the three guys in front of me, their backs come ahead, I felt the boat surge on, and I just thought, this is it. I'm at the top of what I'm doing, this couldn't be any better. And I just remembered, I made sure I memorised that moment and can hold on to that for the rest of my life. But crossing the line, it's that's it. That is absolutely it. Suddenly, any funding you had, we were lottery funded, so it was a grant, that just goes. You suddenly don't have anywhere to be. Suddenly, for the first time in my life, I was not told what to do and where to be for every part of my day, pretty much. And I loved it. For 6 months, I absolutely loved it. We had a weekend, we had our first family weekend. I'd never had 2 days with my family before. We could do stuff. I could go to weddings and funerals and whatever. I could go to the pub. I could go to the pub with my mates. Well, I didn't have any mates, but I could go to the pub without worrying about Jürgen the next day. And then after 6 months, I woke up in a cold sweat. I woke up suddenly realising that I had no one telling me what to do. I had no direction, no drive. I had no goals. I had no aspirations. I didn't know where I wanted to be, what I wanted to do, how I was going to do it. And it was suddenly panic. And then what happened? And then yeah, so I was completely lost. I'd been someone, and then I wasn't. And there's a little bit of that, but almost on that day, an email came into my inbox, and it was from a guy I knew, and he said, "Fancy this, Alex?" And it was an advert, and it said, "Cold weather rower wanted, some rowing experience necessary, give me a call." And I thought, well, I know about rowing, this could be a thing, so I'll give it a go. And so I phoned up this guy, and it was an Icelandic guy, and he told me who he was. He's someone who rowed across the Atlantic, the Pacific, and the Indian Ocean. So I thought, he knows what he's doing. It was for an Arctic rowing expedition, and I thought, well, this is going to be a good project. I love that sort of thing. I love the kind of the outdoors, the exploration side of things. So I'll give it a go.
Right, so actually went to Arctic to row in the Arctic environment.
Yeah.
It's very brave. Do you like cold?
No.
Right, so you mentioned you have 3 children, small children. You're a brave man. I have one, and it's enough. 1 is enough, but 3.
I said that, and I still agree.
So what are the hopes for your kids?
My hopes for my kids are that they don't ever step in the rowing boat. No, I suppose it's the same as any parent would say, that they find something that they love doing. I feel incredibly lucky that until I was 32, I did something that I loved. Despite all the problems and the miserable times I had, it was completely worth it. And even if I if I didn't have those medals, my mates from school would have cut off their arms to have done what I did. To spend my life in a boat with a load of mates, going all over the world racing. It was a wonderful life. And so I would just hope that my children would have the opportunity to do something like that and work somewhere that they love working, like you guys do.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And you wrote a book. We know that you wrote a book because obviously we can see books here. What triggered this? What sort of was behind you starting writing a book?
So this book called Dad Bear, and before you read it, can you just write a 5-star review on Amazon? Very simple. Don't read it. So I've always enjoyed writing, and when I came back from this Arctic rowing expedition, I had some, it was pretty bad. I needed a new project, and I had a discussion with someone. I was introduced to a literary agent, and we came across this idea of writing a book. Anyway, the book is it's a guide for parents to do stuff outdoors with their kids. Everything I remember from my childhood, all my memories from childhood, are times I spent outdoors with my dad, digging a hole 3 foot in the garden to Australia. I mean, I never remember I suppose I'll use again. I never remember the Tuesday afternoon I came home and watched TV. But I remember that afternoon for a couple of minutes digging a hole with Dad. our holidays were spent building shelters and sleeping in these shelters. So those, to me, are the memorable times. I missed two of my children's births, two of my three children's births. And when I was competing, I had to be there, I had to be away, for periods of time, as we all do at times. And so the value of time with my children became very important, very precious to us as a family. So whether it was a Sunday afternoon after training, we would always try and do something outside with our children that they would hopefully remember or would be quality time. And then when I was in my Arctic row, we were in the middle of the Greenland Sea, and I wrote my last text message on my phone to my family. I thought, this is it, we are going to die here. If we capsize this boat, at least 3 of us in this crew will die. We're hundreds of miles away from anywhere, any help. Even if we were tied onto the boat, that if we'd capsized, we'd just been immersed in the water. Hypothermia would have set in, there was nothing to change into, no dry clothes, nothing warm. We would die. So it was a big sort of hit smacker in the back of the head, and I realised that my kids don't care that I'm some brave Arctic explorer doing something that no one's done before. All they want is for me to be at the quiet because they want me to climb a tree with them and go on a bike ride with them. So that was really the motivation behind this book, trying to help other people, and share my experiences with people of how to make memories together, I suppose, with their young people.
Thank you for sharing. There will be some signing at the end, so if you want some autograph, Alex will make Alex available. And what is your top tip? I mean, the school holidays is coming soon, right? And it's October, it's bound to be rainy.
Yeah, you've just had a school holiday.
Half term or whatever they call it, still learning. And what will be your top tip on a rainy day for a family? What shall they do outside, not in the house?
Yeah, I think, well, there's probably some things I should say here. Go outside and play Lego. Take something out.
Thank you.
But can I talk about going outside when it's raining? Kids, it's us as adults, it's us as parents. We are the ones who stop our kids doing the things that they want to do and the things that they're interested in. Kids love being outside, and just because it's inconvenient to us, they get cold, they get wet, we stop them. So I try and encourage, we don't always get this when we are by far not perfect parents. But we do always try and do something outside most days when we can, especially when it's raining. And all it takes is, my book is divided into chapters based on time, so it's after school adventures, 30 minutes, 2 hour, half day, full day, overnight, pushing away from land, based on time. And some of the simplest things you can do outdoors in the rain is get a little tarpaulin, put it in the back of the car, pick your kids up from school, stop in a lay-by somewhere or by the side of a field or in a hedgerow or by the edge of a park. Take your little tarpaulin out and sit underneath this tarpaulin when it's raining, and suddenly you've got a den. Kids love dens. We love dens as well. We're just too old and serious to admit it. And you can sit there and suddenly you have this conversation with your child that you've never been able to have before. You can't have a home because there's too much going on. You have this quality time. And after school, sometimes I take Daisy, our daughter, and we do her reading book by the side of a field under a little tarpaulin in the rain. And she loves that time with me. It's this quality time that she remembers the books that she reads under there better than any others as well. So just simple little things, and definitely get outside.
That's great, thank you. Before I open the floor for questions, because I think Victor already gave me a few pointers that I need to... Okay. The last question from me, and then we open for the audience to ask you questions. Mark Twain said that the 2 most important days in your life are the day when you're born and the day when you find out why. Do you have any ideas by now? in terms of your purpose, so why are you doing all this, what you're doing? And so
I think my experience in the Arctic was a life-changing experience. I used to think, so when I started rowing, I used to think that it was all about me. I was trying to be the best in the world. I was trying to do it on my own. I wanted to be the best person. The changeover from my first 8 years to my second 8 years, from the failure to the success, was when I allowed other people in. I started relying on people, talking to people, and they started relying on me as well. And I became a team player, and that changed everything. It changed my performance, it changed the performance of the teams, and it was just a much more healthy environment to be in. So I've completely forgotten what you were saying. What's the purpose? So yeah, to being helping people, so helping my team to perform was my role in rowing, and that got me my results as well. In the Arctic, when I had this experience where I didn't know whether I was going to come home or not to my family, I realised that this isn't about me. It's not about me trying to be this brave person who I want to be. It's not about me proving to anyone what I'm capable of. I should be at home proving to my kids that I am who they want me to be. And when things change when you have, it's not about you when you're a parent. And I think that it took me a while to realise that, I suppose, quite honestly. But now, yeah, I'm definitely here to try and create the best lives for my kids. I get it wrong the whole time. It's one of the things we have as parents, this guilt, this worry, are we doing it right, are we doing it wrong? But at least we can try. At least I now realise that I have to be there for them.
That's great. Well, thank you very much. It's all from my side. I'd like to give opportunity to people in the audience to ask questions as well. And then we need to check your challenge, how you completed it. There will be no marks or ratings, so no pressure. And then we'll finish with the quick round of questions, like blitz questions from you.